Hello everyone. Okay, so last lesson then, I introduced you to rhetorical figures. Before half term we talked about the importance of understanding the Aristotelian triad. What I'd like to do before I move you on to the next step is to pause this video please and answer the 4 questions in your book. Number 1, what is a rhetorical figure? So I don't want examples, I mean, if I said to you use rhetorical figures, what's that term rhetorical figures actually mean? Number 2, how do rhetorical figures relate to the Aristotelian triad? Number 3, what is antithesis? And number 4, we've got a sentence that says, although cleaning all of the rubbish from our beaches might seem like a Sisyphean task, if we all take part in weekly litter picks, then we will start to make a difference. And the question is, what is the writer trying to imply through the allusion a Sisyphean task? Please pause the video now, answer the 4 questions in your book without checking notes, then check notes for any you weren't sure about, and then restart the video, please. Okay, so number 1, a rhetorical figure is a use of language or a technique or a phrase which is particularly powerful or persuasive, that has particularly strong impact. So when we talk about using rhetorical figures, we're talking about using language devices that give power to your persuasion. Number 2, how do they relate to the Aristotelian triad? Well, they are the devices that give your persuasion power. So the Aristotelian triad, logos, pathos and ethos, is about how you create your argument, how you sell your ideas. And then rhetorical figures are how you give that persuasive power. Number 3, what is antithesis? Opposites. So one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, putting opposites together like that to make a bigger point. And the last one, although cleaning all the rubbish from our beaches might seem like a Sisyphean task, the reference to Sisyphus here means a task which is endless or impossible. Okay, remember Sisyphus had to push a rock up a hill, up a mountain. Every time he got nearly to the top, it rolled back down. So a Sisyphean task, one that seems endless or impossible. And what they're trying to suggest in this sentence is, although it seems like a Sisyphean task, it seems endless and impossible because there is so much litter in the oceans and on the beaches. Actually, if we all took part, we could make a difference. So linked to that little bit of retrieval, what I'd like you to do now is another allusion. It's another wonderful story from Greek mythology, which is Hercules. Hercules you may already be familiar with. But again, if you go back to the Google form, you'll find I've put this video on the Google form. And all I'd like to do is to watch it, it's 5 minutes or so, and to just make notes. Who is Hercules? He's obviously a fictional character in Greek mythology, but who is he? What did he do? And just a few notes about anything you learn about this character Hercules by watching the video. Thank you very much. So pause this one, go to the other one, then come back to this one, please. Okay, so the reason I wanted you to do that isn't just because it's a wonderful story, but because the phrase Herculean effort is, like Sisyphean task, is another really commonly used expression in the English language, which has its origins in Greek mythology. And I found a really relevant example. This was just literally from a couple of days ago. It was from Matt Hancock. He was delivering the daily coronavirus briefing to the media. And he used the phrase Herculean effort. He said he was talking about delivering personal protective equipment to frontline health workers, and he said it had been a Herculean effort. What I'd like you to do is to pause this video and to answer these 2 questions. What does Hancock mean? When he says it's been a Herculean effort, what is he trying to suggest about it? And secondly, why do you think he chose to call it a Herculean effort rather than a Sisyphean task? So it's a little kind of harder there to think about. Please pause this video and make notes answer those 2 questions. Okay, so hopefully you identified quite quickly that by calling it a Herculean effort, he's basically saying it was really hard. We use that expression, a Herculean effort, to mean that something is incredibly challenging or hard. A particularly difficult thing to achieve. In terms of why he chose it rather than Sisyphean task, I would suggest it's much more positive, because although Hercules, the labours, the things he did were incredibly hard, he succeeded. He overcame obstacles and defeated them. Whereas obviously poor old Sisyphus, he never overcame his obstacle. He was relentlessly pushing that boulder up a hill. So if you said it had been a Sisyphean task, that's quite negative, isn't it? Because it would suggest that it's impossible to achieve or that they're never going to get there. But a Herculean effort is much more heroic. It makes it sound as if, yes, it's hard, but the government are going to achieve it. So really interesting how words can be chosen and these cultural allusions can be used, not just to summon up meaning, but to influence how we perceive the speaker. Okay, so all I'd like you to have a go at is to write a sentence suitable for the litter picking speech. So you remember our simple speech where you were trying to persuade others to help you pick litter up off the beaches on a weekly basis. And all I'd like you to do is to write one sentence that is designed to persuade people to do that uses the term Herculean effort within that sentence, please. Okay, so hopefully you managed to write something like a Herculean effort is required from all of us if we want a cleaner environment. Yours is likely slightly different than that, but that's basically it, isn't it? That you're telling people we're going to have to put in a huge effort, but because the word Hercules has connotations, associations of being a hero, it sounds power empowering. Yes, it's hard, but you've got it in you to be a hero and clean the beach up. Sisyphean task, if we want to say a task is really hard, it works really well, but it is a bit more negative because obviously Sisyphus is still there, relentlessly pushing his boulder up a hill. Obviously, you can research a bit more. There's loads of those videos on YouTube about different figures from Greek mythology, different references. You can Google it. You'll find it if you start reading the newspapers and things. You'll see it all the time. And it's just a clever thing to be able to create so much meaning through one short reference. Okay, what I'd like to move on to now is the counter-argument. The counter-argument is incredibly important in persuasive writing. It's the kind of fundamental structure of how persuasion works. So I just want to introduce you to this idea of the counter-argument. Okay, so before we look at what the counter-argument is, I just want to introduce you to this most wondrous of words. That's one of my particular favourites, which is the word specious. Okay, that word here says specious. Now, if we describe something as being specious, we mean that it is superficially plausible, but actually wrong. So if someone says something and on the surface, it seems like it could be true, but actually if you dig a bit deeper, it's false, we can call that a specious argument. So it's a great way to undermine or discredit someone else's argument. If they say something and we call it specious, we accept it's superficially plausible, superficially it could be true, but actually it's wrong. And that's basically what the counter-argument is. It is essential to good persuasion that we show a recognition of the opposite view. We show that we know what people who disagree with us or think differently to us think, but we can prove they are wrong. And this basically involves two sentence stems. There are, of course, people who believe that, and then you would finish that sentence by saying what they believe, who believe that litter picks are pointless because they're time consuming and make little difference. But this is a specious argument because, and this is the essential bit, this is the counter argument bit, respectfully challenging this view. So I couldn't say, but this is just lazy and they should get out there and do their bit, because that's just rude. We have to be respectful and polite, but also show that they're wrong. And a good way of doing that is to use this phrase, a specious argument. There are, of course, people who believe that litter picking is pointless because it takes a lot of time and there's too much litter for us to clear. But this is a specious argument because in places where there has been litter picks done every week on a regular basis, they've seen a reduction in the waste on the beaches. Yeah? So you're just showing that you've got evidence to support that the argument of somebody else is wrong. So you kind of have to be a bit creative here because you have to think, okay, what would someone who agrees with me, what would they think? And okay, now I've thought about what they think, how could I counter that? Okay, so a little task for you. Back to our litter picking speech. Remember, you're trying to persuade somebody to take part in litter picking. Please can you write a counter argument, two sentences that create a counter argument. So can you please use this structure? There are of course people who believe that. So think, someone who didn't want to do a litter pick, what would they say was their reason they didn't want to do it? But this is a specious argument because what could you say to counter that, to show in a polite and respectful way that they are wrong? So please pause this video, and all I want you to write are 2 sentences that create a counter argument using these sentence stems, please. Okay guys, so that's the end for today. Hopefully we've now got some key things. It's essential that you understand logos, ethos and pathos. So if you're not sure about those things, go back through it in order to revise it. And then obviously in addition to that, I want you to know what antithesis is, what an allusion is, and what a counter argument is. All of the PowerPoint slides I've used to create these lessons are on Show My Homework attached to the homework. So if there's things you need to revisit, notes you need to make, obviously go to the slides. Make yourself some flashcards of the terms, test yourself, because it's absolutely essential that you know this stuff. So you just need to keep on finding ways to revisit it until it's nice and secure in your brains. But for now, we're done.